Hello, welcome back to Homeschool Wherever. My name is Carmen Sognonvi, and in this video, I'm going to go over what homeschooling was like for us in the month of October. In this video, I will tell you which curriculum we are no longer using. That's right, another one bit the dust. I'll tell you how my girls made TikToks as part of their final project for our unit study, and I'll tell you about two really cool hands-on experiences we had on a recent trip to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico that really helped bring some of the lessons about marine life and oceans to life for my girls. If you're new to this channel, we are a multiracial secular family living in New York City, and we're homeschooling for the first time this year. We have two daughters, Sean, who's in 6th grade, and Ella, who's in 3rd grade. We're really passionate about using travel to bring our homeschooling lessons to life. This channel is all about documenting our homeschooling journey, so if that sounds of interest to you, I hope you'll subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. We're also full-time family travel creators, so if you want to see that side of our lives, check out our travel channel at Top Flight Family. So in October, we did a trip to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico because we were working with a couple of properties over there. And while we were there, we had two really cool experiences that really brought to life some of the lessons that we had learned this month about oceans and marine life. One experience was releasing baby sea turtles, and the other one was going sea foraging. If you want all the details of those two experiences, I'm going to link below to the video that I made specifically about that. But definitely check it out. Both of these were really cool experiences, and if there's a place near you that offers something like this, definitely take advantage. So in terms of field trips, we didn't do a whole lot this month. The one sort of quasi field trip was going apple picking. So for this, we drove out to a place in New Jersey, did some apple picking. We were pretty late in the season, so a lot of the trees were picked clean already, but it was still a really nice time to feel those fall vibes. And unlike the last time we went apple picking, which was a couple years ago actually, that day it was like the first day of fall, but it was like 90 degrees. On this particular day, it actually was that perfect kind of crisp fall weather, so it was really nice. Of course, Halloween was in October. For us, this was super low-key. We didn't go out, do anything because, you know, COVID. So the girls each wore their onesies. Sean has a Stitch onesie and Ella has a bunny onesie. And we just cuddled up and had a nice family movie night where we watched Goosebumps and had a lot of snacks. And earlier that day, we went to do our early voting. This was our very first time voting in Halloween costumes. So I kind of hope that they continue to expand the early voting thing because this was a lot of fun. Now, I am recording this video on Election Day, so I do not know yet how things are going to turn out. By the time this video comes out, I will either be really upset or really happy. We'll see. But as of now, I'm in ignorant bliss. So this month we did a unit study on Jacques Cousteau. And again, I have a whole video about that unit study if you want all the details on why we chose this topic, how we went about studying it. But one thing that was fun was as the final project for this unit study, instead of going with a more sort of traditional format, actually like we did the previous month, where they created posters about the disco era, this month I actually had my girls create TikToks about Jacques Cousteau as their final project.
Here's 8 fun facts about Jacques Cousteau. He was born June 11th, 1910.
So if you want to see how that worked out, and if you want to watch the actual TikToks, be sure to check out that video all about our Jacques Cousteau unit study. So now let's get into curriculum. What is working? What is not working? What is the curriculum that bit the dust that we are no longer using? Now, first, before I get into it, if you want to see the curriculum choices we made at the beginning of the year, I'm going to link below to that video so you can get the overview of what the original plan was supposed to be. Okay, I just had to put the shade down because it was getting a little too sunny. So let's start with the curriculum that did not make it, that we are no longer going to use, and that is DART, which is Julie Bogart's curriculum. So DART is what we were using as our sort of spelling, grammar, punctuation side of language arts. And if you watch my September recap, you'll see that in that video, I talk about the fact that we really only did like 1 week of September's curriculum. And you know what? When October came around, I just had no desire to go back to it. So I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy this curriculum. It'll work well for them. But for me, I just, as a teacher, was not excited about going back to it. Like when I thought about like cracking it open and, you know, starting it, I was like, ugh. And because of that, we didn't do it in October. And the more days that went by where we didn't do it, I was like, you know what? This is a sign, like this is just not working for us. And in this particular case, it wasn't necessarily that it wasn't working for our girls. it just wasn't working for me. So now we're on a lookout for something new to use for the spelling, grammar, punctuation side of language arts. And I do have a couple of things I'm gonna try out, so I'm gonna reveal more in the November update and let you know how that goes. Now, the other part of our language arts curriculum, which is also from Julie Bogart's Brave Writer, is called partnership writing. And that has actually been going really well. We've really been enjoying that one. So partnership writing is, as the name suggests, all about encouraging kids to write. So in September, the project was all about code breaking. coding. And so the girls learned to write in code, how to break codes. And then for this month, our project was to create a family timeline. And so for this, basically our daughters sort of interviewed me and Serge on what are some of the major dates and events that happened in our family. We stuck a bunch of pieces of paper together to create one long piece of paper. And they started by just writing down significant events on Post-its and then just kind of putting them in order along the timeline. And so it was really kind of cute to see which events they consider to be important. So of course, many of those events were what you would expect, like me and Serge meeting, me and Serge getting married, Sean being born, Ella being born. But it was also really nice to see that a lot of the milestones they picked were specific trips that we've done in the past as a family. So going to Dubai, going to Disney, going skiing. These were all things that they felt were important enough to go on the family timeline. So yeah, this project was definitely fun. I'm still very enthusiastic about partnership writing as a curriculum, so still something I would recommend. So let's talk about US history. So for US history, we're using the curriculum Oh Freedom, which is from a company called Woke Homeschooling. And it's a very sort of decolonized, like non-Eurocentric view of US history. And so in October, we started getting into it a little bit. Now, the issue that I had was I feel like the textbooks that they chose for the first couple chapters, which are more or less about sort of pre-Columbus Americas. So, you know, the indigenous people who were already living here, all of this stuff before, you know, the European explorers got here. I felt like a lot of those textbooks were kind of dry. And even as I was flipping through them, I was kind of like, ugh, not super excited to read them. So I decided to look for different textbooks that would cover this period in a little bit more of a age-appropriate way. And I mean age-appropriate not as in like glossing over the genocide and bad things that happened. I mean age appropriate in terms of language and accessibility and ability to understand things and being kind of like a little more fast-paced and not so dry. So I have found a couple of resources, so we're actually going to get into some of those this month. So for October, we actually focused more on the fiction side of this history curriculum. And so we did a read aloud of Seas Behind Trees, which is a novel about a young indigenous boy who has really bad eyesight and kind of like this quest he goes on with an elder. And it is a beautiful story. And it's one of those things where if I had sort of read the summary of the plot or a description of the book, I probably would not have thought that my girls would be into it, but they both loved this book. It's both very simple and also very deep and complex at the same time. The language is beautiful, it's very poetic, but still very accessible, and the story moves along at a nice clip. So even if you're not particularly studying this period of history, I highly recommend this book. So now let's talk about math. So for math, we are still using Beast Academy. Now, in my September recap video, I had mentioned that at first Beast Academy was a bit of a struggle because it ended up being a little bit more of a challenging curriculum than I had expected. But in September, I came to the light bulb realization that, there's no rule book that says that your kids have to finish every single problem on every single worksheet in the workbook. And as long as they're grasping the main concepts that's introduced in the textbook, and they're able to show a solid understanding as they're doing the problems, then that's really what's important. And so once we had that realization, things have been going so much more smoothly because there wasn't this pressure of like, oh my God, we have to like spend hours and hours finishing this one particular page. Instead, we would work on it for about an hour each day. And then whatever we get done at the end of that hour, that's fine. And if we don't finish every single problem set in that section, not a big deal. As long as they understand it, we can move on to the next one. So for us, Beast Academy is still working pretty well. I'm gonna stick with it for now. I am definitely interested in also exploring Singapore math, which is another curriculum that is highly recommended by a lot of people. And I've also heard from many parents that the Beast Academy and Singapore math work really well together. So I'm going to look into maybe getting that a little bit down the line, but for now, Beast Academy is it and it's working. So let's talk about science. Now, I mentioned in my September video that the original science curriculum that we had picked has gone by the wayside. It wasn't working for us. And in October, we were sort of, trying to figure out a few different options. Now, I will say that science is still not really nailed down right now. However, I've actually decided I'm going to try a different approach towards science. And rather than finding sort of an all-in-one curriculum, we're going to do kind of a unit study approach with it instead. Because I'm really enjoying unit studies. I feel like the girls are, even though they totally make fun of me because now they feel like every time they ask me a question like, hey, how does this work? Or how does that work? They claim that I will always be like, oh, we should do a unit study on that. So now they like love making fun of me for that. But anyway, I enjoy unit studies. The girls enjoy it too, even though they're too cool to admit that they do. And so this month we're actually going to be doing kind of a mini unit on aviation because it is actually National Aviation History Month. And I had already been planning to do that, but more from a historical perspective. But then as I was kind of getting things ready for this month, I was like, why don't we actually like delve into the science part of it? Because it is, after all, like a STEM subject. So I think we're going to do that and get into some of the, basic physics about gravity and forces and, how planes stay in the air. And also, of course, study some of the, cultural, historical stuff, some important figures in aviation history. But yeah, I think we're going to go with that approach and, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so those are kind of our core subjects. Now let's talk about curriculum for some of the secondary or supplemental resources. And the first one is philosophy for kids. And I talked more at length in September's recap video about this, but this is a great resource, definitely recommended. This month we didn't do a whole lot with this. This month in general, there were a lot of homeschool days where we didn't necessarily do like the full usual routine just because things were going on. I was busy with work stuff. And so there were a lot of days where we kind of skipped kind of the morning couch routine stuff, which is where we do, some of our mindfulness stuff, some of our quiet reading. And there were a lot of days where we kind of skipped just to like, get down to business, like the core subjects. So because of this, philosophy for kids didn't get as much love in October as it did in September, but I'm still enjoying the resource, still recommended. We did one chapter, I believe, in October, which I think was about Maimonides and charity, kind of the concept of giving and charity and, some of the issues around that. So yeah, it's still something I enjoy. The girls like the discussions that ensue from it, so definitely recommend. Handwriting is going fine. I got a new cursive book for Sean. That seems to be working better for her. The cursive book that she was working on in September, she kind of felt like was too easy because it was sort of more of a transition from writing block letters to cursive. And she felt like she's already had a bit of experience in cursive, so I guess it was too babyish for her. So we got her a new book that seems to be working fine. And then discovering great artists is still a favorite of ours. So this book, each chapter covers a different famous artist, talks a little bit about their life, introduces some of their main works, and then has an art project that relates back to a technique that they were known for. So we did a couple of projects from this book this month. We studied illuminated books, so we studied the Limburg brothers and their contributions to this art form, and so I had the girls make their little version of illuminated books where there was a big picture in the middle and then some text around it. And then we also did another art project. Unfortunately, the artist's name is escaping me right now, but he was more of a sculptor and he did the big doors in Florence that are very famous. The art project associated with was to create some shapes on cardboard, put foil over it, cover the foil with black paint, and then after it's dry, take steel wool and then rub the paint off to kind of have this like freeze, I think it's called, effect. So unfortunately, this art project was a bit of a fail. The black paint either didn't come off properly, or sometimes by rubbing it, the foil itself would break. So that particular art project was not very successful, but it was still fun as kind of a process art thing to do. So what are the lessons that I learned in October about homeschooling? One lesson is that if you as the parent and the teacher are not excited about a curriculum, let it go. That's what we did with DART, which is the spelling, punctuation, grammar, language arts curriculum we were using. Every time I thought about it, it just seemed like a drag, and I was like, nah, it's time to go. So when it comes to curriculum choices, don't base it just on what's working and what's not working for your kid. Keep your own preferences in mind too, because ultimately if you're not excited about teaching it, that's gonna come through and the kids are gonna absorb that energy as well. Another lesson is that read alouds are incredibly effective. I continue to be surprised by how much my girls enjoy read alouds, how effective they are in terms of them absorbing information, recalling that information. So I think I've talked about read alouds before in last month's recap, but they continue to be a great technique for us in terms of teaching and absorbing information quickly. So, I can read aloud a lot quicker than they can read those same books. So I'm a big believer in read alouds. Definitely, if you're not doing much of it yet in your homeschool, please incorporate it because you'll be amazed. Another realization I had is that busy work doesn't make things better. And I have to say that we already weren't doing much busy work as part of our homeschool, but I think this is part of sort of the deschooling process where in traditional school, there's so much busy work that happens, right? So if you learn something, then you're expected to fill out worksheets, you're expected to do problems, you're expected to write essays and this and that. And there's like all these activities that are designed to sort of prove that you have actually learned that topic. And what I found is that a much more effective way to see if things are actually getting absorbed is just to talk. So after you study a topic, just talk about it with your kids. You know, the next day it's a good idea to kind of recap what we learned the day before. And so you could just be like, hey, do you guys remember what we talked about yesterday about blah, blah, blah? And then see what they remember. And that's a lot quicker and a lot less painful than making them do worksheet after worksheet after worksheet. And also as a parent, you want to make sure that you're also paying attention to those other moments outside of homeschool. There have been so many times where just at the dinner table or as we're getting ready, you know, in the kitchen, I pick up on little things that my girls are saying where they're referencing things that we learned in homeschool. And it's like those moments where I'm like, oh, they're getting it. They're getting it. Like in the moment, they may not seem very excited about what we're learning, but they're absorbing it. So that's always a win. Another lesson is that travel and homeschool go so well together. And of course, this makes me happy because this was really my original vision for homeschooling our girls, is that I wanted to be able to tailor what we were learning to the trips we had coming up and tailor the trips we had coming up to the things that we were learning. And September was sort of the first example of that, where we went to Chichen Itza after studying the Mayans. October was another great example of that, where through doing sea foraging and releasing sea turtles, it really brought some of those marine life, ocean lessons to life. And so that was just a confirmation that, man, we're on the right track. We're doing something good here. Okay, if you want to see what the previous month of homeschooling was like for us, click there to watch our September recap. If you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. Be sure to follow us on both TikTok and Instagram. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.